Karoline Leavitt wasn't expecting her day to take such a dramatic turn. She had a simple plan: grab groceries, check off her to-do list, and make it to her next appointment on time. The Knoxville shopping center was bustling with its usual midday chaos. Mothers wrangling toddlers, teens loitering near the food court, and workers rushing to grab lunch. Karoline moved through the aisles of the mid-sized grocery store, her cart filling with essentials: milk, bread, a few vegetables. It was an ordinary day, but the next 10 minutes would be anything but. As she rounded the corner into the frozen food section, she heard it, a voice, sharp and laced with anger. Unbelievable. People like you think they can just walk around? Like normal citizens. The words were loud enough to turn a few heads. Karoline barely reacted at first, assuming the comment was directed at someone else. But then the voice snapped, "Yeah, I'm talking to you, Karoline." She stopped. A woman stood about 10 feet away, gripping her cart so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She was in her mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing a loose t-shirt with a progressive slogan stretched across her chest. Her eyes were locked onto Karoline, and it was clear this wasn't just a random outburst, it was personal. Karoline exhaled slowly. She had faced hostility before. As a public figure, she was no stranger to confrontations, heated debates, aggressive interviews, online smear campaigns. But this was different. This wasn't a stage or a screen. This was a grocery store, and the tension was palpable. More people began to notice. A woman near the yogurt aisle stopped mid-reach, her eyes darting between Karoline and the angry woman. A couple near the registers whispered to each other, glancing in their direction. The air thickened with anticipation. "What's the problem?" Karoline finally asked, keeping her voice level. The woman scoffed loudly. "You are the problem," she snapped. "People like you, spreading your garbage, thinking you can get away with it. You disgust me." Karoline kept her posture relaxed. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. If she responded with anger, the situation would spiral. She noticed the woman's hands shaking, her breathing fast and erratic. This wasn't just about politics. This woman was furious about something deeper. "Listen," Karoline said, her tone calm. "I don't know what's upsetting you, but oh, don't pretend." The woman cut her off, stepping forward and closing the gap between them. "You and your kind, you're dangerous. You have no idea what people like me have been through because of you." More heads turned. A man near the checkout reached for his phone, holding it just low enough to stay discreet. A cashier stopped mid-scan, her eyes flicking up, waiting to see if this was going to turn into something viral. Karoline held her ground. She had been through tough interviews, brutal smear campaigns, and stage ambushes by reporters. But this was raw, unfiltered. It wasn't some pundit trying to score a debate point. It was just a woman, boiling over with rage. The woman lunged forward. Not a full attack, but close. Her hands didn't make contact, but they came too close, too aggressive. Gasps rippled through the store. A man near the floral section stepped forward, ready to intervene. A woman behind Karoline muttered, "Oh, this is bad." Karoline still didn't move. She could have stepped back, raised her hands, given the crowd a reaction. But instead, she locked eyes with the woman and said, "I'm not afraid of you." The woman's face twisted. For a moment, it looked like she might lose control completely. But then, doubt flickered in her eyes. She had expected a fight, expected yelling, expected Karoline to break. Instead, Karoline stood there, calm as ever. The energy in the store shifted. The same people who had been waiting for a spectacle now saw something else. They saw a woman unraveling. They saw Karoline standing in front of her, not as a politician, but as a person. The man near the checkout spoke up. "This ain't the place for this, lady." The woman's head snapped toward him. "Stay out of this," she snapped, her face flushed red. But the energy had shifted. People weren't just watching anymore, they were reacting. A woman near the fruit aisle whispered to her husband, "This is insane. She's just shopping." A younger guy, mid-20s, wearing a shirt that made his political leanings clear, shook his head and muttered, "This is too much." The tension hung thick in the air. The woman still seethed, but Karoline remained still, not passive, not intimidated, just in control. "I get it," Karoline said, her voice calm but firm. "You don't like me. You don't like what I stand for. But you're not going to intimidate me." The woman let out a bitter laugh. "Intimidate you? Oh, please. You think you're some kind of victim here? After all the harm you and your kind have caused?" Her voice cracked. It wasn't just anger anymore. There was something deeper beneath it. Karoline saw it. This woman wasn't just angry at her. She was hurting. Something in her life, something beyond politics, had festered into this moment. Karoline could have fought back. She could have embarrassed her, torn her apart with words that would have sent social media into a frenzy. But she didn't. Instead, she tilted her head slightly and asked, genuinely, "What are you really mad about?" The woman flinched. For a second, just a second, she looked off balance. Like no one had ever asked her that before. Like no one had ever really seen her. The store was silent. Even the cashiers had stopped working. The only sound was the low hum of the overhead lights. Karoline took a step forward. Not in aggression, not in defense, but in understanding. "I mean it," she said, softer this time. "I don't think this is about me." The woman's breath hitched. For a moment, it looked like she might crumble. But then she stiffened, her face hardening. "You don't get to turn this on me," she spat. Karoline didn't react. She didn't push. She didn't argue. She just let the moment sit. And for the first time, the crowd shifted. The same people who had been waiting for a spectacle now saw something else. They saw a woman unraveling. They saw Karoline standing in front of her, not as a politician, but as a person. The guy with the phone, who had been recording since the beginning, slowly lowered it. The older man near the registers muttered under his breath, "Huh." Even the young woman near the bakery who had whispered, "Oh, this is bad," now looked like she wasn't so sure anymore. The shift was subtle, but it was happening. The woman must have felt it too, because her anger turned to embarrassment. Her eyes darted around, scanning the crowd that had only moments ago felt like her audience. Now, they weren't so sure, and neither was she. Before she could decide what to do next, a voice cut through the heavy silence. "That's enough." It wasn't security. It wasn't a store manager. It was a customer, a man in his late 40s, standing near the checkout. Lines, arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't dressed to impress, just a regular guy. But now he had decided to step forward. The woman spun toward him, her face still flushed, still defensive. "Excuse me?" she snapped. He didn't flinch. "I said, that's enough." His voice was even, firm, not angry, just done. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some nodded. Others exchanged quick glances, as if silently agreeing but hesitant to get involved. The woman's hands clenched at her sides. She was losing the room. "This isn't your business," she shot back, her voice cracking just slightly. The man shrugged. "Actually, it is. I was just trying to check out and leave. But now I gotta stand here and watch you scream at a woman buying groceries." "Yeah, I'd say that makes it my business." A small ripple of agreement followed. The young woman from earlier, the one near the bakery, spoke up next. "She hasn't even raised her voice at you," she pointed out, looking at Karoline. "She's just standing there, and you're the one yelling." The woman's lips parted slightly, like she wanted to respond, but nothing came out. A teenage boy near the self-checkout let out a low, awkward whistle, not loud enough to be obnoxious, just enough to signal what everyone was starting to realize. This wasn't going the way she thought it would. Karoline hadn't fought back. She hadn't taken the bait. She had let the moment reveal itself, and now the woman was standing in the wreckage of her own making. The power dynamic had shifted. Her confidence wasn't there anymore. Instead, uncertainty flickered in her expression. She looked at the man, the young woman, the growing number of people whose faces no longer looked entertained or sympathetic, just tired of the scene. For the first time since this started, she hesitated. Karoline could see it in her posture, the way she shifted from foot to foot, the way her eyes flickered toward the exit, like she was debating whether to just walk away. But before she could, make that decision, another voice cut in. This time, it was security. A middle-aged store employee in a red vest approached, followed by a uniformed security guard. "Ma'am, we need to ask you to leave," the security guard said, his voice neutral but firm. "Not a suggestion, a decision." The woman's head snapped toward him, her face twisting. "I'm the one being removed?" she asked, her voice an octave higher than before. "She's the one—" She stopped, because no one was backing her up anymore. The man near the checkout, arms still crossed. The young woman, staring at her with disbelief. The others, silent. Even the guy who'd been recording from the start. His phone was now at his side. It hit her all at once. This was over. Her shoulders slumped. Her hands fell to her sides. The fight had drained out of her. Without another word, she turned, grabbed her cart, and pushed it toward the exit. No grand exit speech, no final attempt. To save face, just a quiet shuffle of footsteps as she left. Security followed, making sure she didn't cause another scene. And just like that, the tension shattered. People let out the breath they'd been holding. Conversations started up. Again. The store returned to normal, but not completely. Because something had shifted. Karoline exhaled, rolling her shoulders as if shaking off the weight of the moment. She hadn't asked for this confrontation. She hadn't expected to become the center of attention on a random afternoon grocery run. But that's exactly what had happened. And now, the store was watching her. People who had stayed silent during the ordeal were suddenly not so quiet anymore. "That was something else," the man from the checkout said, shaking his head. "You handled that real well." A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the store. A woman in her 60s wearing a floral blouse stepped closer, adjusting her glasses. "You know," she said, "I don't always agree with your politics, but I respect the way you handled yourself today. A lot of people would have lost their temper." Karoline offered a polite smile. "I appreciate that." And then, something unexpected. A younger guy, maybe mid-20s, approached. His shirt made it clear that he leaned in the opposite direction. Politically, the kind of person who probably would have argued with Karoline online, maybe even criticized her in a comment section. But now, he looked conflicted. "I was kind of waiting for you to blow up," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Not gonna lie, I thought this was about to be one of those viral political meltdown videos." Karoline raised a brow. "And?" He let out a breath, shaking his head. "And? I don't know. You didn't feed into it. You didn't make it worse. That was surprising." It wasn't a full admission, not quite a moment of complete agreement. But it was something. And in today's world, something like that mattered. As Karoline turned back to her cart, a soft voice caught her attention. "I'm sorry about that." It was the young woman from the bakery section. She stepped forward, her face filled with guilt. "I know I didn't do anything," she said, "but I didn't say anything either. Not when it started, not when she got in your face. I just stood there." Her voice was thick with regret. "I didn't want to get involved, but now I feel like I should have." Karoline studied her for a moment, then simply nodded. "I get it," she said. "It's not easy to step in, but you spoke up when it mattered." The young woman gave a small, grateful smile. And then the unexpected happened. An older man who had been leaning against his cart near the self-checkout started clapping. Just once, then twice, slow, deliberate. At first it felt awkward, out of place. But then, others joined in. A woman near the registers, a cashier behind the counter, a man in the back of the store who had been watching since the beginning. It wasn't a loud, dramatic applause, not some grand, performative standing ovation. It was just a quiet, honest recognition, a moment of acknowledgement. Karoline felt her throat tighten, not with sadness, not with frustration, but with something else entirely. Gratitude. Not for the applause, not for the attention, but for the simple fact that even in a world so divided, moments like this could still happen. As she pushed her cart toward the exit, the weight of what had just happened settled in. This wasn't just about politics. This was about something bigger, and it wasn't over yet. If you made it to the end of this story, I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone completely shifted the energy of a situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe for more stories that challenge, inspire, and make us think. I'll see you in the next one.